Imagine what would you do if your honor, your family, was mocked under bright lights in front of the world? Would you walk away? Or would you stand up and speak a truth that could shake a city? Tonight, we revisit one of the most talked about moments in modern political culture, a moment that started as nothing more than a glittering charity gala, but ended as something far greater. This is not a story about celebrity. It's not even a story about scandal. It's a story about silence and what happens when it breaks. The Gotham Liberty Gala was never just another evening. It was the annual convergence of politics, power, and polished veneers. Held in the resplendent Metropolitan Pavilion in New York, the event drew titans, senators, CEOs, generals, and A-listers, all dressed to impress, to posture, to be seen. The chandeliers shimmered, the champagne flowed. Behind every smile was an angle. And then she walked in. Karoline Leavitt wasn't born into this world of gold-threaded gowns and curated applause. But when she entered that room in a deep emerald dress that caught the light just enough, with a silver cross at her neck and purpose in her step, the atmosphere shifted. Not because of flash or fame, but because conviction had entered the room. At her side was Captain Miles Whitmore, her husband, a former Marine, now a quiet giant in a world of noisy reputations. He wore his past not as a boast but as a bearing. Steady, present, calm. At their arrival, the social current in the room twitched. Is that her security detail? No, that's her husband. A Marine, I think. They took their seats without flourish, yet every eye seemed to drift toward them. At center stage stood the host of the evening, Tom Cruise, still sharp, still smirking, his silver hair catching light like a weapon, his voice smooth as oil and just as slick. "Welcome to the Gotham Gala," he began. "We've got senators, singers, and even some folks who still believe in objective truth." Laughter rippled. "And there's Karoline Leavitt, America's favorite fire starter," he quipped. "She brought a date who looks like he just walked out of a Marine Corps poster." The chuckle that followed had an edge to it, one that grew sharper as he went on. "I mean, I assumed he was her bodyguard, until I noticed the ring. She married him? What is this, Jason Bourne meets C-SPAN?" More laughter. Uneasy this time. Karoline said nothing. She didn't flinch, but her hand on the table stopped tracing the rim of her glass. Tom wasn't done. "I respect the troops," he said, pacing like a man performing confidence. "But marrying one doesn't mean you know how to lead. Combat and credibility aren't synonyms." The crowd thinned. Not physically, but emotionally. Some looked away. Others froze in place. Captain Miles didn't move. His stillness spoke louder than any retort. His hand merely reached for his water, lifted it, sipped, but his eyes had become immovable stone. Karoline remained upright, lips barely curved. Then came the final jab. "Of course," Tom said, raising his glass. "I did my own stunts. Karoline just married hers." A pause. Then discomfort rippled through the room like wind through silk. That was when Karoline stood. Not abruptly, not dramatically, simply stood. Miles rose too. No words exchanged. They left their table like royalty abandoning a corrupted court. Chairs didn't scrape. No waiter stumbled. No spotlight followed. But something deeper did. Tom raised an eyebrow. "Looks like someone didn't enjoy the punchline," he muttered, lifting his glass again. "Anyway, where were we?" But he had lost the room. People nodded but no longer smiled. The air didn't dance. It waited. And then she returned. From the wing, Karoline stepped back into the light. Heels on marble. The unmistakable rhythm of intent. She didn't storm. She strode. And every step was a reminder that respect isn't claimed through applause. It's demanded through presence. Tom chuckled nervously into the mic. "Karoline, coming back for round 2? She didn't reply. She walked to the second microphone. Center stage, opposite him. Two worlds, now divided by 10 feet of distance and a canyon of values. She turned to the audience. "You know," she began, calm and crystalline, "since Tom brought me into the act, I thought it only fair to respond." Nervous laughter bubbled. She let it settle. "It's easy to mock people who live outside your bubble," she said, her voice never rising, yet cutting sharper than any scream. People not defined by opening weekends or tabloid rankings. She glanced toward her table, toward her husband. He didn't sign up for fame. He signed up to protect it. More silence. When Tom joked about Marines, he wasn't mocking me. He mocked the sacrifices of people who've never needed cameras to prove they matter. She paused, letting the weight hang. And for the record, Jason Bourne wouldn't last 10 seconds against my husband. A beat, then applause. Rising, gaining, spreading like a truth long withheld. Veterans stood. Press aides whispered. Staffers clapped. The room, at last, aligned. Karoline leaned once more into the mic. "Tom," she said, "I don't need to be a movie star to command a stage. I just need to tell the truth." She didn't wait for validation. She simply walked off, the applause trailing behind her like a ribbon of fire. Miles waited backstage. No words exchanged, just a nod. And in the ballroom, for the first time all night, Tom Cruise had nothing to say. Back inside the ballroom, the mood had fractured. Tom Cruise still held the microphone, but his posture had shifted. That poised swagger had dulled at the edges. He adjusted his cuff, smirked, then tried to reassert control. "Well," he said, his voice thinner now, nothing like a spontaneous TED Talk in the middle of a fundraiser. A few chuckles, scattered, uncomfortable. "But let's not confuse a viral moment with real leadership," he continued, aiming for recovery. "There's a reason we separate performers from policymakers." He tried to laugh again, but the sound died in his throat. The room no longer belonged to him. Because power had moved. Through the parted crowd, another figure walked toward the stage. Calm, deliberate, undeniable. Captain Miles Whitmore. Not a word spoken, not a finger pointed. Just a man who carried authority in the way he breathed. He reached the edge of the platform. A stage technician, unsure but sensing the shift, offered him a handheld microphone. Miles took it, and for several heartbeats, he simply stood there. Silent. Tom took a step back, uncertain now. "Can I help you?" Miles didn't answer right away. He just turned, looked out at the audience. Then, softly, without bluster, without ego, he spoke. "One joke doesn't matter." His tone was calm, measured, razor sharp. "But what you normalize does." He nodded once, returned the mic to the technician, and stepped off the stage. No speech, no confrontation, just a scalpel of truth. And that was all it took. Phones went up. Social feeds exploded. Headlines changed mid-print. That single sentence would be replayed millions of times over the next 24 hours. By morning, it had a name. Hashtag one joke doesn't matter. Commentators scrambled to decode its impact. Veterans groups posted support. Podcasts analyzed the cadence. News anchors called it the moment that redefined the night. Tom Cruise, he fumed. Inside his luxury suite overlooking Central Park, he watched the clip play again and again. His smirk from the gala now replaced by a tight jaw and clenched fists. "She humiliated me," he hissed. "She staged this." His aide hesitated. "I think she just told the truth." "Get my legal team." Hours later, a thick envelope arrived at the West Wing. On the header, notice of defamation concern. Karoline Leavitt read it in her office. Sunlight spilled across her desk. She turned each page slowly, unmoved by the bold font or the veiled threats. Miles leaned in the doorway, a fresh mug of coffee in his hand. "He's really going there?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her filing cabinet and withdrew a flash drive. Small, scuffed, labeled in faint black ink, Project Fairwind. She turned it over in her hand, then spoke. "He thinks this is about last night, but this started long before that." She plugged it into her laptop. The screen lit up with folders. 2019_HonorFest_event_log. Internal_cruise_memo. Emails_withdrawn support. Photos_empty_stage. Draft_press release_cancelled. She clicked through. Images of veterans sitting alone in rows of folding chairs, a deserted podium, and sign banners. Karoline had been there. Back then, she was a junior staffer, handing out programs. She remembered how Tom Cruise's team had promised a $250,000 donation and his personal appearance. He never showed. No explanation. No apology. Just silence. Until now. That evening, Karoline appeared on GNN's Prime Point, seated opposite journalist Grant Maddox. "This flash drive," she said, holding it up on live television, contains records from a 2019 Veterans event where Mr. Cruise pledged support and withdrew, quietly without reason. On the screen behind her, emails and memos appeared. From T. Cruise, rep at starpulse.co. Subject: HonorFest appearance. Message: due to brand alignment concerns, Mr. Cruise will not attend. We advise this remain undisclosed. Grant looked stunned. Karoline remained composed. "I was there," she said. "I saw veterans wait in dress uniform for a man who never came. Some brought families. Some bought plane tickets. What did he offer in return? Silence." The segment cut to photographs. Veterans in rows. A color guard with no audience. A banner sagging without purpose. "And now he's suing me," she said, for showing what he hoped we'd all forget. Then, she delivered the line that would be replayed on every platform that week. "You sued me for harming your image, but all I did was show your truth." The interview went viral. Within 12 hours, #TruthOverFame trended #1 globally. Veterans groups across 50 states reposted the video. GNN broke its ratings record for that time slot. Hollywood insiders began murmuring, "Is Cruise overplaying this?" Then came the moment that cracked the dam. A tweet, just 31 words. At Michael Ashford Official. "I attended the 2019 HonorFest event. Karoline Leavitt spoke the truth. I watched the disappointment spread when Tom Cruise didn't show. Those veterans deserved better." Michael Ashford, the most respected man in Hollywood, universally admired, apolitical, untouchable. His words detonated online. Even celebrities who feared backlash reposted him. #ProjectFairWind became a cultural reckoning. Inside Tom's inner circle, panic escalated. Publicists drafted apologies. Studio heads urged restraint. Sponsors threatened clauses. Tom rejected them all. "We don't cave to trending hashtags," he snapped. But the walls were closing in. That's when the smear campaign began. A fringe site ran a headline: "Is Karoline Leavitt weaponizing patriotism?" Other tabloids picked it up. They cited anonymous sources, suggesting she staged moments for political gain. Claimed she was using her husband's military status as image armor. Photos were taken out of context. Phrases twisted. The same playbook as every hit job. Karoline read the article once, then closed her laptop. She opened a folder labeled Truth Over Optics, a file her team had quietly compiled in anticipation of exactly this. That night, she released a 2-minute video. No production, no dramatic editing, just raw clips. Her hugging a widow after a medal ceremony, setting up folding chairs at a small-town fundraiser, comforting a child in a flag pin. A retired general saying she shows more honor in her pinky than some men do in an entire tour. The final screen faded to. Some fight with cameras, others fight with courage. Social media erupted. #LeavittLeads trended above the smear. Even major networks shared it with captions like, "This is what leadership looks like." No spin, no filter, just truth. She didn't clap back. She stood up. Michael Ashford reposted it with one word: integrity. Inside Cruise's war room, a whisper finally broke the silence. She's not playing defense anymore. She's winning. 2 days later, Tom Cruise's legal team quietly withdrew the defamation threat. No press conference, no apology, just a silent retraction submitted to the court clerk. Reporters noticed, but the public? They'd already moved on. Because by now, the story was no longer about Tom Cruise. It was about what comes after the camera fades. At the National Valor Summit in Virginia, an open-air gathering for veterans, military families, students, and public servants, Karoline Leavitt stood beneath a sky as wide as her conviction. The sun caught the silver cross at her collar as she approached the podium. No teleprompter. No stagecraft. Just her. Rows of veterans sat silently. American flags whispered in the wind behind them. She took a moment, then began. I've been asked why I spoke out, why I stepped onto that stage, why I didn't let the moment pass. She glanced at the front row, where young cadets sat beside a wheelchair-bound veteran with ribbons across his chest. It was never about one man's joke, she said. It was about every American who's ever been told they were too proud, too loud, too loyal. Applause began to ripple, quietly at first, then rising like waves. I stood that night because silence would have made me complicit, and because the people who raised me, who fought for this country, taught me that when honor is under fire, you don't duck. She paused. And you definitely don't flinch. A staffer approached, gently handed her a printed letter. She opened it. It was brief, just a few lines. She read them aloud. Sometimes courage isn't found on a battlefield. It's standing still in truth while others scramble for image. Michael Ashford. The crowd rose to its feet, not with frenzy, but with reverence. Even the reporters lowered their cameras. Back in Washington that evening, Karoline returned to her office. The noise had quieted, the headlines had faded, but something deeper had taken root. She opened her desk drawer. Inside, the flash drive labeled Project Fairwind still rested, scuffed and silent. She held it for a long moment, not as a trophy, as a reminder of what she'd seen, what she'd stood for, and what had tried and failed to silence her. Because truth doesn't need a microphone to matter. It only needs someone willing to carry it, even when the lights go cold. Karoline placed the flash drive back into its drawer and closed it gently. Outside her window, Washington's skyline blinked into dusk, buildings that housed power, ambition, history. And in one corner office, a woman who had outlasted spectacle. Not because she yelled, because she stood,